There is a question that comes up constantly in INFJ communities, and it never really gets answered satisfactorily. Do INFJs actually attract toxic people, or are they simply so good at detecting problematic behavior that they notice it more than other personality types do? The honest answer is that both things are true at the same time, and understanding how they work together explains a pattern that most INFJs have experienced repeatedly throughout their lives without ever fully being able to name it. Start with the attraction side because this is the part that stings a little. INFJs have a combination of qualities that are genuinely magnetic to certain types of difficult people. They are deeply empathetic, meaning they feel what others feel and respond to it naturally and without calculation. They are patient in a way that goes beyond ordinary politeness. They are genuinely interested in understanding people, including understanding why people behave the way they do, which means they extend curiosity and compassion even toward behavior that most people would simply walk away from. They are also highly private about their own needs, which means they tend to give significantly more than they ask for in return. For a person who is used to being tolerated rather than genuinely accepted, or who has learned to use emotional manipulation to get their needs met, an INFJ is an extraordinarily appealing target. Here is someone who will listen without judgment, who will try to understand rather than condemn, who will stay patient long past the point where most people have already left. Toxic people, whether they are consciously aware of it or not, recognize this quality and are drawn to it. There is also the rescuer tendency that many INFJs carry, often without realizing how deeply it runs. INFJs frequently feel a pull toward people who are struggling, broken, misunderstood, or carrying pain they cannot express clearly. This is not a flaw in itself. It comes from a genuinely compassionate place. But it creates a vulnerability, because the kinds of people who present as wounded or misunderstood include, unfortunately, a significant number of people whose difficulties are rooted not in circumstance, but in patterns of behavior that damage everyone around them. The INFJ sees the pain and responds to it. They believe in the person's potential for growth. They invest in the relationship based on who the person could be rather than who the person is currently demonstrating themselves to be. And by the time the full pattern of the other person's behavior becomes undeniable, the INFJ is already deeply involved and emotionally committed in a way that makes leaving feel like abandonment rather than self-protection. Now here is the other side, the detection side, and this is where it gets genuinely complicated. INFJs are not naive. They are actually one of the most perceptive personality types when it comes to reading people. They pick up on inconsistencies between what someone says and how they behave. They notice when someone's energy does not match their words. They sense manipulation, insincerity, and hidden agendas often before there is any concrete evidence to point to. This means that in many cases, an INFJ knows, on some level fairly early, that a person in their life is not entirely safe or trustworthy. They feel it. Their intuition flags it clearly. And then they override it. This is the part that confuses people from the outside and frustrates INFJs themselves when they look back on relationships that went badly. Why, if you could see the signs, did you stay? The answer is layered, but it comes down to a few consistent patterns. First, INFJs have a deep resistance to judging people without what they consider sufficient evidence. Feeling that someone is off is not the same, in the INFJ's mind, as having proof. And because they are so aware of their own capacity for misreading situations through the lens of their emotions, they second-guess their intuition more than they should. They give the benefit of the doubt not out of ignorance, but out of a genuine ethical commitment to fairness. Second, INFJs often believe, sometimes correctly but frequently not, that people are capable of changing if they are given enough understanding, patience, and the right kind of support. The INFJ stays not because they are blind, but because they are hoping. They are betting on the version of the person they can see underneath the difficult behavior, and they're willing to absorb a significant amount of pain while waiting for that version to show up consistently. Third, and this is the one that most INFJs are reluctant to admit, leaving feels wrong to them on a moral level, especially if they have made any kind of implicit or explicit commitment to the relationship. INFJs take their commitments seriously. Walking away from someone who is clearly struggling, even if that person is the source of the INFJ's own pain, triggers a guilt response that can be paralyzing. The result is that the INFJ ends up in a loop, detecting the toxicity clearly, understanding intellectually that the relationship is damaging, and yet remaining because their values around loyalty, compassion, and not abandoning people in difficulty are stronger in that moment than their instinct for self-protection. In professional settings like online tutoring, this pattern shows up in a more contained but still recognizable form. An INFJ tutor will often sense within the first few minutes of a session that a student is going to be difficult. The tone is slightly off, the energy feels dismissive or demanding, something about the interaction does not feel right. And instead of acting on that instinct immediately, the INFJ gives the student a chance. And then another chance. They adjust their approach, extend extra patience, try harder to connect, and work to find something genuine in the interaction. Sometimes this works, and the student turns out to be having a bad day and genuinely appreciates the effort. But sometimes the initial read was accurate, and the session ends badly, leaving the INFJ wondering why they did not trust themselves earlier. The practical answer for INFJs dealing with this pattern, whether in personal relationships or professional settings, is not to become cold or suspicious, but to close the gap between detection and action. The intuition is reliable. The second-guessing is the problem. When something feels consistently wrong about a person or an interaction, that feeling is data, not proof that requires verification before you are allowed to act on it. Adjusting how quickly you respond to your own signals, rather than waiting for undeniable evidence before protecting yourself, is the single most effective shift available to an INFJ who keeps finding themselves in the same exhausting cycle. You are not too sensitive. You are not wrong about what you're sensing. You are just too kind for your own good sometimes. And kindness without boundaries is not a virtue. It is an open door.